FPK, Future-Proof Knowledge Podcast, Mind Unlocked. With every episode we cast real talk, real tools, wisdom on the fly. Tune in, geek out, reach for the sky. FPK, Future-Proof Knowledge Podcast.
Future-Proof Knowledge Podcast, episode 17 even. Oh my God. It's good that I can't remember those things today, because that kind of shows that, sometimes we all make mistakes and that's okay, and there's different drivers for it. This week, we have the dream team, Olive and Jason, and we've gone out, we've spent a fortune on one of the big stars to come and join and play on the team. Laura, welcome. How are you?
I'm great, thank you. Nice to be with you all.
Laura, for the listeners, do you want to give them a little bit of an introduction to who you are and why you've joined the team today?
Oh, so I am Laura. I've got some feedback. How can I stop that?
Well, that's a very good question. I don't know why you've got feedback. Do you have headphones?
I have. I can plug those in. As long as it's not causing a problem from everybody else, that's fine.
No, we're all good.
Let's pop this headphone on.
That's okay. Live TV
Nothing
is
like
great.
technical issues, is there?
Absolutely. While Laura gets set up, Jason, how are you doing today?
Oh, I'm doing absolutely great. Had a good morning, got the son all ready for school, sat around waiting for the bus only to realize there is no school today. So it's Daddy and Sunday.
Excellent. And Olive, how are you
if
today?
I get up a few times, it's because I have to address the kid here.
Excellent. Olive, how are you doing today?
I'm good, thank you. I'm fine.
Did you have to get anybody dressed today, and apart from yourself, to get out the door?
I had to get out really early to move the cars out the drive
Okay.
because my daughter was going out.
Right. That's okay.
Apart from that, I didn't have to get anybody dressed, no.
Laura, how are you doing now? Is it working?
So I've still got feedback, but that's fine. Can you hear the feedback?
No, we can't hear the feedback.
Right, okay. Well, I will trust that it will be okay. Just
Absolutely.
hearing myself twice. So I'm Laura. I actually met you three. How long is it now, Olive? 2 or 3 years?
All time.
I don't
Long
know,
time.
but all of you have opened my eyes to this new world. And I work with neurodivergent children, athletes, young adults, and upon that journey, realised that I had a ton of traits of what traditionally is called ADHD, but I love Olive's term, which is EPIC, exceptionally perceptive, imaginative, and creative. And that's probably how I identify myself. I am not diagnosed, but I absolutely would love to speak about this today with you three.
Yeah, thanks so much for joining us. And this is why we wanted you on to join us for this conversation, because of your experience, not only with the people that you work with, but also your own experience and how, with the knowledge that you've gained and the experience that you have, you're able to kind of see those things start to resonate within yourself as well, which is, I think, we are definitely seeing a lot more adults get diagnoses of ADHD. And for any of the ones that I speak to, they will talk about how it's been a game changer for them. Not just, oh, that's fine, nothing is different. It really has been a game changer because it's helped them understand themselves a bit better, be a bit kinder to themselves and their expectation levels on themselves, and be able to have that conversation with the people around them to let them know, look, I'm not just being a pain in your ass. There are things that are causing maybe some of the decisions or whatever ways that I am right now. And then they can go and find out the information that they need. And we're going to delve into ADHD today because there are a lot of misconceptions. There's a lot of, I suppose, beliefs that people have around what to expect from somebody who has ADHD. And what I can find sometimes is that a lot of people will say, well, they're not going crazy in the classroom, or, my kid isn't kind of running around, running through brick walls and houses, so they haven't got it. But there are lots of different ways that we see the ADHD coming out in people's different behaviors and interactions. So I can't wait to get into it. But I suppose, Laura, what was for you the initial driver to begin to work in this field? Like, what was it that attracted you to working with neurodiverse people?
So I think I actually fell into this bit. I think what happens when you train as a coach is that you end up attracting people that are very similar to you. And I then realised that actually a lot of the stuff that was coming up was I was resonating with. So during lockdown, I retrained, and I retrained as a NLP coach, master practitioner, trainer, and a cognitive hypnotherapist. And I just felt like I had come home. So I loved doing this work. And then I was working with adults, and they would mention about their children. And that's how it sort of started for me to work with children. And then I had the athletes at my daughter's gymnastics club who were saying the children that were doing okay prior to COVID are now not progressing at the same speed that they would expect them to, having worked with lots of gymnasts for years. And they have got these mental blocks and lots of stuff going on. So I started doing mindset workshops, which help them with growth mindset, help them ground, help them with perception, help them understand how their brains, each brain is different. And the more I realised that actually so many of the athletes are neurodivergent, and a lot of them really struggle in the school system. So as somebody that likes to hyper-focus, I took a deep dive. I'd already started working with Olive at this point, so I had a real understanding of dyslexia. Olive dives into ADHD a bit as well, and it grew from there. And now I have clients that I just love working with, that are different, because one person with ADHD is not the same as another person with ADHD, all unique. So that's how it sort of ended up working, and I absolutely love it.
That's amazing. And do you know what I find interesting is the advice and techniques that we will give to neurodiverse people to help them self-regulate and manage themselves better are beneficial for everybody.
Absolutely.
So I find it fascinating that we don't teach every child from the start of school these self-regulation and self-management techniques, because they're going to help in some form or another. But I suppose that is the crux of it. The teachers can't teach everything. So, we won't put too much pressure on them.
I don't think they're aware, a lot of them. So I've worked in an alternative provision, and I've also worked in schools where I go and see the Senko, and some of them are just not fully aware of the things and the tools that they can implement that can make a big difference.
So is that one of the processes that you have? Do you try and bring those techniques into the schools and empower the instructors and teachers on what to do?
I do, and they are up against a system that has just not got the time to allow these children the space to pace, especially when you get into high school, that if these children have been missed, they're just expected to carry on. But by this time, they're in severe anxiety.
which fuels and increases the, I suppose, the negative elements of the ADHD as well. So
Oh, massively.
it's such a vicious loop. And Oliver, I'll bring you in. So, like, as Laura mentioned there, you do talk quite a bit about ADHD and the impact that that can have. When did you first become aware of it, and what were the signs that you started to look out for within the young people that you started to work with?
Gosh, I can't remember now. I mean, you're asking me this for a really long time ago. I mean, I started. Let's go the other way around. I started off with dyslexia, and we talked about that all last week on this podcast. And then ADHD started to become more well known, and I'm going, these kids are doing ADHD as well. And there is a huge overlap between dyslexia and ADHD. If you look at some of the material, some people will say it's 40%, some people will say it's 60%. Goodness knows what it is. But there is a lot of people around who are really struggling with both of them, and they are related. But when you go for an assessment, you go for a dyslexia assessment, or you go for an ADHD assessment, and people aren't joining up the dots. I mean, I find it quite remarkable. And so I drifted into ADHD through this route and have continued in it. And, for example, quite a lot of my clients come through the recovery colleges, which people don't know about them. They're in the UK, every county's got recovery colleges. And we work with adults there who've got diagnosed or undiagnosed dyslexia and or ADHD, and we're telling them things that they've never found out about who they really are. And so, I mean, I'd like to say I'm not trying to change anybody to fix anybody who's got ADHD. My mission is to help them find some strategies and to understand more about themselves so they can be the most effective person they can be, and also try and do something about the people who surround them and tell them more, educate them more about what they can do to get, when you're in business, what can you do to get the best out of your employees? That should be standard. And getting your best out of neurodiverse employees should be standard as well. And in families, it's the same thing.
Yeah, I was talking to a lady who has got a startup, and hopefully in the new year she's going to come on as a guest, who has set up a company to work with organizations and companies to help them become more neurodiverse friendly for their staff, because she got a diagnosis late on in her life, and again she was one of those people who said it just changed things for me because everything started to make sense to me, which is such a powerful thing. And then she kind of felt like, right, well, I've spent my time working in all these companies that I've worked for over the years, but there isn't an understanding. And it's not about calling people out, it's not calling people ignorant. We just don't know what we don't know. Like, if we haven't been exposed to something, we don't take a particular interest in it, we're not going to know about it. It's just one of those things. Jason, I'm going to bring you in because, sorry, Olive, you were going to say something there.
Can I just say it's generational as well? Because
okay, explain that a bit more.
Well, our parents didn't know anything about ADHD. So if we've got symptoms of ADHD, they're not going to know. And if you've got grandparents involved in this, you have grandparents getting really grumpy with their own kids because the grandchildren are out of control or something or other, ADHD-ish, and the grandparents just haven't, this isn't in their game plan at all. They have no idea what they're talking about. It's like, he's just lazy, get his act together sort of thing. That's what they did in my day. So I'll stop there.
Oh, sorry, Laura, go on.
High masking and high functioning as well, I think, has happened over the generations.
Absolutely. This actually reminds me of a conversation, Jason, you and I had about well, maybe it on one of the podcasts, or was it maybe outside of the podcast? We talk a lot, so I'm not quite sure about. I think it was your dad and talking about your son and stuff like that, and he just couldn't get his head around it, like that you had to deal with him differently to how a typical child would be brought up.
Yeah, and I find that's quite common amongst associates of mine that I know who have kids that are on the spectrum or have ADHD or just any um, diagnosis. Yeah, my father, he couldn't grasp it. He's like, oh, he'll be all right. He'll grow up. We need to like find him a car. We were very into classic cars, so eh, the last few years of his life, he was focused on let's build a car for Jace. Let's build a car for Jace so he can drive, so he can drive. And we built the car, but the whole time he never understood the gravity of what the situation is. And there's lots of books out there directed towards grandparents and those outside of the immediate family circle. And I find that those are great pieces of resource information for those people that are just outside of your circle to try to start to get that understanding. Because it's not that there's no disrespect in it because people only know what they know. And the first couple encounters you have with it, it's cute and it's funny. But then once it's multiple people and it's ongoing, it becomes, why can't people understand this? And it becomes a source of frustration that us as parents who are dealing with the situation at hand, that's one extra source of frustration we don't need.
Yeah, that's really huge. And I think, like, I've spoken to many parents over the years, and for them, they try to get the balance between trying to make people aware of their children's situation, but at the same time not getting their child walking around wearing the t-shirt going, I am ADHD, I have autism, I am dyslexic. Like, so it is that, I could imagine, quite a challenging balancing act. Has that been your experience?
Yeah, quite a bit. And the other part of that is that you ever try to like plead your case to somebody who just doesn't believe you, and the more you try to plead your case, the more it sounds like you're just making up excuses. So oftentimes I can see it on people's faces when I'm having the conversation that in my mind I see their wheels spinning like, oh, he's just coming up with excuses of why he's not a bad parent. It's because this is all parenting. This has nothing to do with the kid having ADHD or whatever it may be. It's just a parent coming up with excuses and defenses for themselves of why their child does what they do, and they don't want to take responsibility for themselves. So as you're trying to like express this and plead this, I see it two ways. I'm pretty good at it at reading people, and most of the time people in my mind are dismissive to our explanations. So I'm the type of person, I just don't care. I'll explain it once, you don't get it, that's fine, it's my business, go about yours. um, but one thing I want to touch on, since we're at this point here, when it comes to ADHD, I've never taken a deep dive into what ADHD is. So can we start with a example? What is ADHD? My understanding has always been people who can't focus on things, but I've also heard recently that it's people who can also hyper focus on things. So let's get that definition out there and let the viewers understand exactly what we're discussing.
Look at you skipping ahead, and Laura, I'm going to bring you in your expertise because I can see you chomping at the bit there. Right. So give us some different examples of it, of what ADHD, what it isn't, and what are some of the traits. Hi, Jace. What are some of the traits that people might see?
Hi, yeah. I think it's different for everybody, and I think I think the label probably got me for quite a while as well, Jashon, because I don't really like labels, but I appreciate for some people they can be life-changing, and for others they can be detrimental because they can live beneath the label that can sometimes limit them. But the way I see it now is that a label is like a care instruction, like how you would get a label on a piece of clothing that, you might want to only wash it at 40 degrees because if you wash it any higher, it will shrink. And, I have a label of multiple sclerosis. So for me, my care instruction would be, keep inflammation low. And so in terms of ADHD, the label doesn't necessarily say what it is on the tin. And I think that that's where a lot of people get confused, because I would not have thought of myself as attention deficit hyperactive or a disorder. However, I absolutely have the ability to get distracted really easily and also hyperfocus really deeply. So that variable attention is very, very real for me. And understanding some of these traits of how they can be beneficial and how they can be challenging for us is really important, because when you understand you and who you are and how you process information, then you can put in the tools to be able to survive or thrive even maybe in a world that is not necessarily set up for a neurodiverse mind. So I really do try in my household to make it neuro-inclusive. So it's like and I think some of this has come from me understanding how my brain breast thinks and processes information. And actually I was living out of alignment with myself. So then there's the hyperactivity side of it. So the typical hyperactivity is the 9-year-old boy bouncing off the walls at school. Well, that was not me as a child. I was also in a really great school where the teacher understood me and would, as soon as I'd finished my work, would get me to go and help the other kids. Or they'd give me an extra textbook, and I'd constantly be doing things because I couldn't sit still. But I didn't see that as a problem because the teacher never allowed me to see it as a problem. I was that child, I've got a rocking chair now, but I was rocking on my chair at school. I was doodling, I was drawing on things. Being bored was like kryptonite for me. So I just kept busy constantly. And it served me very well for a very long time until a lot of my coping strategies, some of them healthy, some of them unhealthy, fell apart. And I think you're right. I think there's adults, as they're getting older, especially women, especially as we're moving through into different stages of our lives, where we once wouldn't even have met the criteria of ADHD because it wasn't debilitating. So we might have had the traits, but it wasn't debilitating in our lives because we put in great coping strategies and tools. All of a sudden find ourselves in perimenopause without those coping strategies, because busyness was one of my coping strategies, and then all of a sudden it's like I can't even remember my name some days. All those coping strategies fall apart, and now actually you would probably meet the criteria. But it's not
That's really
necessarily how people would see it because of the name.
Yeah, and definitely in my experience, and certainly from speaking with teachers, they would see very different traits in boys and girls.
Yeah.
So they would be used to the boys being more likely to be bouncing off the walls, and they'd see the girls being more hyper focused and quieter about it. So from a very young age we start to learn those strategies. But even before we went live, myself and Jason were admiring the dress behind you, and you're saying that's something that you started as a 9-year-old, started to hyper focus in. So was that a way of you, looking back now, was that a way, do you think, of you starting to cope with this constantly having to focus on something, or was it distraction?
Twofold, well, probably threefold actually then. So it started because I'm very small. So basically anything that I bought to wear, my mum would buy me a uniform that was like 10 sizes too big. But it was the right age So it was like, this is for 11-year-old, but it doesn't fit me. So I very quickly started altering my sister's old uniform into a uniform that would fit me. I'd have safety pins in my jumper, so it was a bit of a necessity. And then I think I realise now that looking back, it was preventing me from being bored. So I would literally every week, I mean, my mum and dad hated it, and we've had this conversation now, so it won't be a surprise to them. But I would, make an outfit in the day and go out in the evening as I got older. So I made my outfit for my, end of school disco. I made my first top when I was 9, and I would trial and error, but I would hyper focus. My room would be a mess. It would be full of pins and cotton. I would have cut the bed sheets up, not on purpose, just because I was laying out the fabric on the bed and cutting it, and often would make a snip in the bed sheets. And, I think it was a way of, I suppose it was a way of managing my mind that was always really busy. Because when I'm in that mode, I'm only focused on that challenge of constructing that piece of dress. That dress behind has had 2 incarnations. It used to have sleeves, and then it's the top now is basically what the sleeve was.
Brilliant.
But I would, it was a way of keeping me occupied, and also challenging me. I love a good problem solving. I love a good challenge, and stimulation.
Yeah, and do you know what? You just described in the best possible fashion society and the reasons why we are doing what we're doing with future-proof knowledge. When you said the clothes were the right age, but they just didn't fit me. And that is, if ever there was a way to describe the education system, the sports system, the way we live in society, is it fits the majority maybe, or a higher percentage maybe, but it doesn't fit everybody. And what happens then is the people it doesn't fit feel like there's something wrong with them when they've just been given the wrong size clothes. Olive, I'm going to bring you in because you seem to be chomping at the bit there. Like, what's your take on what we've just been discussing?
Oh, I completely agree with Laura. I would say that's an easy option here. There was some additional things that I thought might be worth mentioning. I'd like to mention VAST, because I've completely forgotten what it stands for, but it was identified by Ned Halliwell, who is a world leader in ADHD, and in his book ADHD 2.0, and it's a really good read, by the way. And he described VAST about it being basically socially induced ADHD. So it's all about the pace of life, everything that's going on, scrolling through phones, etc., etc. And one of the examples he gave was parents of young children, because you've only got to look at the parents of young children, up to the age of about 6 or something, I suspect, and it's chaos in their brains. They've got all this stuff to be organising all day long, and it does begin to look very ADHD-ish. And so a lot of people are getting diagnosed with ADHD when actually it should be VAST, and if they could get over that hyperactive mode and move into a more peaceful mode, it would be easier. So I think that's one thing worth mentioning. There is this very high overlap with dyslexia, and I put this down to the enormous amounts of stress generated by dyslexia, which then gets your brain into a hyperactive mode, and because there's so many puzzles to try and sort out when you're reading or spelling, basically. So I think that's another point.
So variable attention stimulus trait.
Thank you. I always forget that one.
It's easy to forget, in fairness. Okay. So, and I love that you're bringing that up, Olive, because if we think about it, like in society, like the way we live now does induce constant focus, constant movement, constant on the go.
Yeah,
And like one of the things we will regularly talk about, and I work in the schools with, is about trying to teach kids to stop and slow
yeah.
down. And the problem is, people just think, okay, well, what we do is we remove the screens away from them, and that's going to teach them about slowing down. But it's not, because that's this is a part of their world.
Yep.
So what we got to do is try and find a way for them to slow down without them feeling like they're being punished and having the screen taken away from them. So it's really interesting. But go on,
And another,
I cut across you.
no, it's all right. And another thing I don't like is basically is dumbing down tasks because ADHDs in quotes can't cope with this amount of information. Well, most of the time they're actually brighter than anybody else in the classroom. But it's a question of how the information is delivered to them. I mean, from last week, you'll probably remember, I spent all my time talking about people who think in pictures. And ADHD people definitely think in pictures most of the time. Interestingly, I'd like to find somebody who disagrees with this, but when you go for an ADHD assessment, nobody actually mentions your pictures and how many pictures you've got going around in your head. And I've had students who have got, well, when you ask them to picture a cat, they've got 100 cats and they're all fighting. You know, can you imagine what that's doing to your brain? And that's a very ADHD trait. And but there are ways you can help people calm that emotional charge down. We use a lot of breathing and grounding to try and help people get under control. And I must say, I do not want to fix any ADHD people. I want to just give them strategies that we know have been useful for other people and to try them out for them and see if it improves their experience so they understand more about what's happening in their brains. I don't want to go around fixing anybody because the skills they have are superb. They just have to work out for themselves, with a bit of help, how to best use them. That's my opinion.
But I think that's the point is that there is nothing to fix. It's just
No.
it's a different way of operating.
Yeah.
Jay Sean, go on.
No, so I've got two takeaways from that. So it's important to focus on the expectations once the diagnosis, and I agree with all of their, like, oftentimes the expectations are set too low. I focus on not so much the expectations that the person who has a diagnosis should do. I think the first step is, how do you explain the diagnosis to the person? Because that's the important part. If you explain the diagnosis to the person that this is a deficit, it's something wrong with you, it now becomes a barrier. And they're like, oh, well, I can't do anything above this because I have this and this is a deficit. It's a barrier. So I'm not even going to try this. When we get these diagnoses and we express these to our kids and we're sharing this and we're trying to get them to understand it, we need to be very focused on, this is your superpower. Let's teach you how to manage it, because you can do anything you want to do as long as you learn how to manage what you've been diagnosed with. It's just too often, even the doctors and the therapists who are giving us these diagnoses, they lead in with, here's your limitations, here's why you can't do this. So it's all in the way we frame the diagnosis to the person who's being diagnosed. Because if you tell me I can't do something because of this, my mind subconsciously is going to always know that that's a barrier. If you never tell me that and you say I'm limitless in what I can do, but you have this certain power within you that you need to learn how to manage, then that way it makes the person who's being diagnosed understand, and they never see the limitations. They're just seeing, okay, how do I use my superpower to the best of my ability? And then the second part of that is, I'm not diagnosed with ADHD. The way I hyper focus on things and can just get lost, I can get lost into doing something for 36 hours and have to be reminded to get up and eat and take a shower, things like that. I would be devastated if somebody fixed me and took that ability away from me. Because what I can do when I get hyper focused is unbelievable. I can run circles around the average person. I can go leaps and bounds. And if that was fixed because it was described as something broken in me, it would limit my success. It would totally crush my soul. I mean, these aren't things that are broken. These are just things that need to be learned. These are tools. I think ADHD is a tool. I think autism is a tool on a different operating system. We learn how to manage and use the tool. There is no disability. It's just a different ability.
And I suppose we're in a society that we're not going to change society. No, that doesn't mean we can't influence society, but and while you were talking, I literally was just picturing, I can't remember which Superman it was, but where he goes kind of a bit off the rails. And when he wasn't controlling his superpower, he literally could destroy everything. But what happens is, with the young people that I work with, maybe who are neurodiverse in whatever different way, they become fearful of it. And they can take on a belief system that my superpower is dangerous. You know what I mean? So I could come along and, I could destroy the classroom, or I could, tear my parents' house apart because maybe I have, and there's that fear then can become, you can feel like you can't control it. And what we need to do is try and show people different techniques that might work for them, to begin to harness it in a way that they can live in the society that we have built out, because we're probably not changing society. Laura, I'm assuming that's pretty much one of the fundamentals when you are working with neurodiverse people as a coach, that you're trying to remove those maybe internal barriers that they've taken on, or belief systems they've taken on because of the diagnosis, the deficit, the restrictions, the danger that you present to the world around you, and like that can be a real danger, because I've worked with many kids who at kind of 4, 5, 6, 7 years of age can be so overcome that they pick up their little baby brother or sister and they're like, oh my God, you're so, and the parents jump in and they're like, leave their child alone, you're going to kill them, and that can be so scary, because like that's not the intention, but they just haven't learned the skills to harness that. So can you talk to us a bit more about the work that you do and how you actually go through that process?
Yeah, so for me, I think the main thing that comes up is the shame that comes with the way that they are, and I think that it was probably also true to me for me to an extent, in terms of the messaging that I got was that you're too much, you get carried away, you're awkward, because I didn't always conform, and you're always late. So we need to have a whole new different podcast on the time blindness, and it is really about helping them to understand the drivers behind some of those things. So a lot of the time they've been given these negative messages subconsciously, sometimes consciously, but a lot of the time we are very hyper sensitive to other people's energies, emotions, that if we are not able to understand why we're behaving in that way, that it then becomes, like you say, out of control. And I don't even know whether it's about harnessing it. I think it's about understanding it. And a lot of the time when you have children, or teens especially, and they've got into the self-harm side of it, and it's like it is a coping strategy for something that they think that they're wrong. Like they're being constantly told, is it something like 20,000 messages before the age of 10 of like comments or criticisms, and those play heavily on them. And I think when you start to sort of go, oh, that's why I do this. Like, so for example, for me, I have a love-hate relationship with time. And I've recognised that that last minute actually stimulates me because it invokes the stress response. As long as it's not too much stress that tips into overwhelm, it triggers adrenaline. And I, like Jashon, can go for 36 hours, not even realise I need to eat, sleep, or anything, and I will just get it done. And it was a brilliant superpower of mine up until the point where my body just wouldn't cope with doing that anymore. So the 2 a.m. finishes for making a dress wasn't appropriate anymore. But I had focus. I think in this day and age, if I'd had a phone, I would have used that as my distractibility. I don't know whether I would have achieved all that I have achieved in my life if I had had access to a phone. And it is not the kids' fault. They have got this amazing not superpower, whatever you want to call it, the strengths that they have, that they're not being allowed to be valued. And I think the very first place that I start is identifying those strengths, which Olive taught me, and helping them to value them for themselves. And then we do a two-prong approach, because I also work with the parents, or at least try and support the parents and the teachers. They can understand too. And then it's almost like them starting from the beginning again to go, I'm okay. I'm exhausted because I've been masking all day and I need some transition time. A lot of parents don't recognise that the kids need transition periods from one task to another. And in this fast-paced society, sometimes it's difficult for them to give them that space, but then that's when the child is playing up. But what's behind that behaviour?
That's exactly it. And, so I've been running parenting courses for 20 odd years. And one of the fundamental things is that if a child is misbehaving, there's usually something going on behind it. So whether it's their thoughts, their emotions, their feelings, their environment, something is stimulating them to become disruptive to, whatever it is you need them to do. And by helping parents to try and get to grips with that you don't have the spawn of the devil who has come out of you and is here on the planet just to cause you harm and distress. That if you can, and it's difficult, but take that step back and not react to the whatever's gone on, the incident, and go, okay, well, what might be going on? Maybe it's as simple as your child didn't get enough sleep. Maybe it's as simple as your child is petrified of going into school because the teacher gives out to them for being a distraction or tapping their fingers on the table, which was my thing, but like constantly doing that and kind of annoying teachers. So it is about trying to, as best as we can, support the people around the people to be as supportive as they can be and understanding as they can be, while understanding they're human beings and they're going to make mistakes as well. Olive, talk to us a little bit about the values that Laura mentioned there that you think are really important as we do try to support the young people that we are working with or living with in many cases.
The things that they're really good at, you mean?
Yeah.
I from day one of being a coach to neurodiverse people, which is 25 years ago now, I started collecting together what they were good at. And parents would be really surprised at me, I brought my child to see you because they've got these problems, acting out or whatever it is. And why are you talking to them about what they're good at? And so it was a bit of a culture shock for them. But there were several reasons. Firstly was it cheered them up no end. And secondly, I could understand how they were actually thinking by what they were good at and how they were doing it. And so that was great. And so it enabled me to construct a list of things I could see neurodiverse students doing. And there is now a list of 40 of them. And there is problem solving, there's creative thinking, there's curiosity, there is intuition, there is 40 of them. And when I work with the adults and I ask them how many they think they've got before I give them the list, it's normally about 2 or 3. They've completely lost track of anything they could be good at because quite a lot of them are out of work. And by the time we finished, an hour later, most of them think they've got in the high 20s, something like that, out of 40, which is completely changes them. And so it gives them a good platform for finding out what they can do in life, I suppose is one good thing. And so I have the list available to anybody who wants it, and it's just fascinating to see how people are just ignoring what they are good at and finding it quite extraordinary to be asked what they're good at. I remember reading a book many years ago called I Love Me, I think it was called, and there was a catalogue in the middle of it that said, what are you good at? And I found myself phoning up my friends and asking them because they got a better idea than I had. But I do think, one of the big things that comes into this is we are moving on so fast. I mean, this is a generational thing. This wasn't around when I was a kid, to anywhere near the extent it is now. And where are we going to be by the end of the generation, or in the next 10 years or 20 years? I think we're going to have more neurodiverse. We're going to have, the definition of neurodiverse and neurodivergent is going to be wrong, because nobody's going to be neurotypical, in my opinion. And so we might as well get used to the fact that we're all neurodiverse who are involved in this field at the moment. And by the time within 10 years, probably everybody's going to be neurodiverse. And so it's really important to educate people who don't look to be neurodiverse at the moment as to what the possibilities are, in my opinion.
Yeah, and because we have to try and still instill that sense of creativity. So they're like what would be described as the neurotypical people are still very creative. It's just they do it in a different way sometimes. Like it's
Some
not
are,
like,
some aren't.
but that's the reality. But like I think what can happen is, and maybe it's what happens with the system and structures that we have, is that those young people who are described as neurotypical, like we've discussed before, the 98% of 4-year-olds will classify as creative geniuses. There's a lot of neurotypical kids in that 98%. So I think they just become so good at learning in school that they think this is the way that I'm going to progress, and this is the way, because I'm getting positive feedback from teachers, I'm getting positive feedback from my parents, I'm getting positive feedback from the students around me, or maybe negative feedback from the students around me, but I'm getting all the feedback, and this is telling me that I get these, what we call in transactional analysis, strokes. These things that make me feel good. So of course I'm going to excel at that. And then I push my creativity to the side because I'm not getting strokes for that. So I think the more creativity that we inspire within all people, the better society can be. But it will likely be quite a different society, and that can cause fear for people who like things just the way they are. Jason, talk to me a bit about your hyperfocus, because it's one of the things that I find phenomenal about you. And so if anyone asks me about Jason and what's he good at, and I'll be like, the man is like a robot. He's just his ability to focus on something and find out, okay, this isn't working, I got to find it out. And if that takes 36 hours, 36 weeks, I'm going to find it. Like, for you growing up, was that a challenge to deal with, and for people around you to deal with, or was it always something that was encouraged and inspired within you?
It was always encouraged. It There was a lot of problems in school, just because my mind thought so fast. I can never stay on task of what the teacher was talking about because I can listen and I can also doodle on the side and plan what I was going to do after school, or my mind just always needed something to do. So yeah, it got me in a lot of tricky situations in school, but I wouldn't change it for anything. I mean, the way that I can hyper focus now that I know how to control it and how to use it. Um, yeah, I wouldn't change it for anything. Actually, what it makes me think of is, so I wasn't a neurotypical kid in school, but what I've learned in my experience and from looking around and being on job sites and just observations, um, I'm glad I wasn't a neurotypical student because I think anybody who can think back to their junior high and high school days and imagine all the students that they went to school with, all the neurotypical students, um, in my experience today, aren't doing anything extraordinary. They're doing just regular stuff that regular average human beings do. They're working regular retail jobs or whatever. They might be nurses, but nothing extraordinary. But I look at the Facebook and the LinkedIn's of all those ones who were considered the non-neurotypical, the ones that were getting in trouble in class, or the ones that weren't showing up to class or ditching school. Somehow, all these people are business owners and executives, and they've created something, and they're above where all the neurotypical students were that were expected to succeed in class. Then in the school, you also had those exceptional students, your students that were like the valedictorians. They were just smart as can be. I see those people on Facebook and LinkedIn, and they are the business owners and they own foundations and they're doing stuff like that. So there was a place for them. I'm glad I was in the not expected to succeed but bucket, because across the board, it seems like everyone that was in my bucket has done better than those that were the neurotypical, because we have superpowers. And as we get older, we learn how to focus them. I don't know how many of you ever have been on a construction site. I had a general contracting company. And one thing that I found interesting is the majority of the best workers, the ones that got there before um, work started and stayed a little bit after work were done, um, and they can just focus, knock things out, had some type of non-neurotypical, as they say, diagnosis, and they were just the best workers. They were really good, and they knew how to do their stuff. It's like every place I've been, every interaction I've had in life, in my career, and social engagements, it seems all those that have done well for themselves were always the ones that were the least likely to succeed and had some type of neurodiversity. And then if you really look at the grand scope of things, who's all your innovators in all the world? All the top names of all the top innovators all have what society calls a diversity, a non-neurotypical diagnosis of something. I mean, from the Elon Musk, which is a horrible example, but I mean, just if you go through the names, it's like, how are these people so powerful in what they do? Because they were the type of people, maybe ADHD, where they just focus and that's all they can focus on. So if all they can focus on is finances, they're bound to be the best financial expert in the world because that's their only source of focus and that's all they can uh, think about. Thinking like a Warren Buffett. So you hear these names and every one of them has some type of neurodiversity. So I'm the type of parent and the type of person that if you know you have a what society calls a diversity, I'm the one to put it on my shirt, show it off, be a badge, and like, yeah, I've got something that the majority of the world doesn't have, and you can't have it. It's mine, and watch what I can do with it. So I celebrate it, and I want everybody to know that Jace is flapping hands and he has autism, and he's fucking proud of it because he's going to be able to do things and focus on things that none of you will ever be able to do with your neurotypical minds. I don't
Yeah.
know. I guess I'm ranting. I
No,
just
no.
get super excited.
Yeah. Now, what I will say is I've spent a lot of my working life working with those neurodiverse kids who didn't have a support structure or an environment that supported and encouraged them. And they're the ones who went the complete opposite direction, where drug abuse, crime, because of the environment that they were brought up in. And I think and I've probably said this a million times before, some of the best business people I have ever come across are drug dealers. How they can
Absolutely.
manage the networks of people. Now, granted, they manage it through fear and intimidation, but they still have to manage it, and they still have to make sure that the boats get through the port and slip through the net, and they know where to go, they are phenomenal. Imagine what they could have done if they had a different environment and a different support structure around them. Maybe they would be the Elon Musks, maybe they would be the Warren Buffetts, maybe they would be the Richard Bransons. Like, we don't know, and that's why I think we're all on a mission to try and encourage people, to parents, young people, society, to start to recognize that this is something that needs to change, because we've learned so much more. And yes, we're only at the surface of it, and we haven't got tons and tons and tons of research, but it's coming, and it's coming fast. So our job is to take what we've learned so far, get it out there as best as we can, and try and encourage and support people to make those real changes in their homes. Because if we sit and wait and expect governments, society to tell us, okay, everything's okay now, this is what you do now, we'll be waiting for a long, long time. And if there's any parent out there, you don't need to worry about school. You don't need to worry about your kids' friends. You don't need to worry about the government. You just need to worry about your kid and trying to put the support system and structure in place for them to try and help them be as great as they can. And that's clearly what you're doing, Jay Sean, and many, many parents are doing. Folks, we're coming up on the hour. Olive, I just want to say thank you so much, as always. Have you any final words before we wrap up?
I would say if you've got children in school, schools talk about behaviours. Accept that fact, and you look at what's behind the behaviours. You explore those, and you can do something with what's behind the behaviours. You can't do awful lot with the behaviours themselves. That's where the naughty step came in.
Yeah.
And sitting on the naughty step isn't going to do anybody any good. There you go.
Well, it does. It gives the parents a break.
Well, that might work.
Thanks, Olive. Jay Sean, have you any final words before we wrap up?
You don't have any disabilities. Diagnosis is not a disability. It's just a roadmap to your superpower. You take that diagnosis, you look at what it tells you you can do, and you figure out how to apply that to yourself so that they're not negative. And I think it's just, we need to change the doctors and the people giving the diagnosis, and we need to change the thinking of the parents who are receiving the diagnosis, that don't look at it as a negative thing, look at it as an instruction manual that you've just been handed, that most parents aren't given the opportunity to be handed that type of instruction manual.
Yeah. Olive, you've got your hand up there. Laura, I'll come to you in a sec, but
Can I just make one more comment? When I first started this work, back in the day, people were talking about spiky profiles. And I really think it's a great shame we haven't continued to talk about spiky profiles. Because then you can say, they're really good at this and they're not so good at that. And they're really good at this and not so good at that. So we don't get them in a label, because not all ADHDers are the same. Not all dyslexics are the same. They've all got this spiky profile. And if you can just sort out what they're really enjoying and what they're good at, that's the way to go forward.
brilliant. And maybe we'll just do a full episode on spiky profiles. And we'll bring in the superstar that we brought in with the final word. Laura, you've been absolutely phenomenal today. Thank you so much for what you've brought, and hopefully we can get you on again. Have you any final thoughts?
Yeah, I think just understanding that a lot of these children and their parents have been misunderstood or are misunderstood. And I think for me, it's about being curious, being compassionate, and giving choices. If you give a neurodiverse person a choice to make help, to allow them to feel that they are in control, sometimes it's an illusion of choice, it can make such a difference to them. And allow them to have the space and time to understand what's going on for themselves. And I know that sometimes it's really difficult when you've got the school system on your back. I'm with you, Ellen, that not all these students have got that support in the same way that Jashon has. But if you can just sort of take that step back, take yourself out of that pressure from the school system and almost be that buffer between you and the child, that child can learn to thrive despite the system that is not currently, although hopefully in the future, but currently isn't serving them.
That's what we're all working towards. Laura, thanks so much for joining us. It's been fantastic to have you. As always, thank you so much for your ears, everybody. We really appreciate you tuning in and sharing and liking our stuff, and also give us a little rating as well. And Jason has just thrown into the chat, try the FPKX for free for life. Ooh, we've been very generous there, Jason, letting people jump on and try FPKX, our behavioral tracking and insights application. We'll be back next week. We'll have to see who's going to join us. Until then, look after yourselves.